My name's John. Mitch will walk back in shortly just to chime in where he thinks I'm not doing it right. So we're going to talk about bike maintenance and preparation pre the event, as well as things you might have to think about on the day, and jump in if you think I'm skipping over something and you miss it, ask the question. I changed the tube and took a wheel off the bike in the last group, so I'm more than happy to do that again. So you guys are putting a lot of effort in to train for a massive event. It's a big achievement. You don't want to be let down by your machinery on the day if you've done all this work. So there's a few simple things. So I'll start with wheels, tyres in particular. You want a tyre that's nice and round and new, and you should inspect it, see if there's any tears in it, any little holes, any bits of glass that might be stuck in there that so far haven't punctured your tube that could. If your tyre is fairly flat on the top surface, and you'll feel this one is if you want to come look at it later, it's a fair sign that it's getting quite worn out. So it's a good sign that you possibly want to replace it. If you see any cracking along the side or on top, that's also another sign that it's getting a bit worn out. Keeping your tyres pumped up to around 100 psi all the time is going to make you go faster. Your tyre's going to last longer, and you're a lot less likely to get a puncture. So you should be pumping it up at least every second ride, if not every ride, to get the best performance out of your bike. And you should be doing it, because it's way easier, with a pump, a floor pump like this, with a gauge. No gauge, not much point. So that's the best way to go about it. Pre-race, you want to make sure your bike is serviced. If Mitch was here, he'd laugh the next day. If you want to clean your bike all the time, Justin, who owns this bike, cleans it every single time he rides it. That's a bit on the extreme, but the one thing Justin knows about is his bike now. He can tell you what's good and what's not. He knows how the chain and cassette are going. He can also tell you that it's polished, beautiful yellow, or green, depending on how you see the colour of this, because he's looking at it all the time. So a good way to see if you're unlucky enough to get a crack in your frame or anything like that, you'll know because you're cleaning your bike. The good thing about doing that is that, particularly for triathletes, and they're the people who don't do this, is by taking your wheels out and doing that, all the gunk that's collecting around here. There's a triathlete covering your head right now.
He's not talking about
I'm not talking about Katie. Katie's bike gets looked after really well. By house. No, so by cleaning that sort of stuff, by taking the wheel out and cleaning around there, that cable in particular that's generally exposed, you're going to keep that in good condition. Something as simple as that is going to make your gears shift a whole lot easier. Keeping your chain of cassette nice and clean. We generally would suggest some sort of degreaser and a little brush to clean your chain and cassette. Taking them off is a good way to do it, so you take it away from the bike and keep everything neat and tidy. A lot of people also lubricate their chain really often. So with chain lubricant, you need to only lubricate a clean chain. So you should be cleaning it first and then lubricating it. A lot of people just sort of go, went for a really wet ride today, I better lubricate the chain. All you're doing is adding more gunk and more moisture to attract more and more gunk, and you just keep building up, and you'll just wear everything out a lot quicker. If you've got a lot of chain wear, one of the things you guys might notice in particular if you're doing hills training is every time you stand up to put the power down, it skips, and that's a sign of your chain or cassette wearing. So you do want to look at that sort of thing. If your gears are skipping up and down, so as you go to change the gears, just do click, 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 that's a sign that the cable tension's not right, so you just need a bit of a gear tune. So there's some of the things to be looking out for. The other big thing for you guys is brakes. If your brake pads are looking worn, and they do have a wear line generally across the top, they have something that says wear line, you want to look at that wear line. If you're close to it, consider replacing it, because it's going to take one wet day, and if you guys are doing 5 dams or even 3 dams and it's a wet day, you're going to wear through your pads pretty quickly. So best off to make sure some simple things like that are sorted before you start the day. On the day, the biggest thing you guys are likely to encounter is punctures. Is anyone here who is unsure of how to change a tube? Feel free to admit it. Keep good?
I'm not worried about it. What I'm concerned about, because I've got new tyres on, is actually having the strength to get the tyre back onto
the good thing is you're not the only person on the road on that day. There's 2,000 people out there, so the kind-heartedness of the rest of the people around.
Just put your leg out and the guys will stop.
Someone's going to stop and help you, that's the upside, I would think. Or you're going to wave at people like this and someone is going to think, oh, look at that nice lady, oh. No, someone's going to stop and help you out with the thumb strength, hopefully. if you can, if all else fails, you can use a tyre lever, but you're risking.
I have got tyre levers, but
Yeah. So let's just practice, or hand off to Mitch like I did in the last week.
Just one question: when you put your tube back in, is there a I hear people when they put tubes back in, the wheel goes off balance because the tube is not in square or
Yep, not seated properly.
Is that right?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So when you put it back in, so in the last group when I put it back in, I made a point of pressing the valve down so the valve is sitting nicely in the rim. That's one of the key things. A lot of people will get an oval-shaped tube or wheel because the tube's sitting up a bit, because that valve has been able to sit up in the rim, and so that's one of the things that will make it uneven. The other thing is that the tyre has just got slightly off centre, so as you've pumped it up, one bead is sitting a bit low, which means the other one might sit a bit high, so the whole tyre is just coming on the side as opposed to straight. So depending on how you pump it up, you can sort of stop along the way and just sort of even it out if you're seeing that it's on an angle. Obviously, if you use a CO2 canister and you pump it up and you don't have a spare one, then you're just going to ride with a bit of a wobble in your wheel, which isn't a total disaster, not great. But just once you put the tyre back, the tube in and the tyre's on, before you've inflated it, just make sure it's looking like it's seated fairly well, and then inflate it. We generally recommend, just for simple ease, you want to use a gas canister. So if you're not familiar with these, this is a 2-second job of pumping your tyre up versus using a little hand pump that you've got on your bike. So for $30 for the combo and then $4 replacements, it's a far easier way to go about it. With all good luck, you're hopefully not going to use this very often, maybe once a year. Last time you were flat. 2 years ago. So all going well, you went there.
Is there a few do's and don'ts with changing the tyres? I can do it, and I do it quite regularly, but it takes me about 5 minutes.
Just that, as far as time goes, that comes down to practice. So hopefully you don't get too much practice. Unless you work in a bike shop, hopefully you don't change them very regularly. It's that's the only way, is just keep doing it over and over. So hopefully it's not something you get too good at really, unless you work in a bike shop.
So do you put the new tube in the tyre or just around the rim first and then put the...
I never take a tyre off. Or I'll do the back, because I did it in the last group. Alright, so first up, release the brake. Put your gear in the lowest cog at the back and at the front, because then your chain's got the least amount of tension on it. Back wheel shouldn't generally need to undo too often. Just take the pressure off the derailleur, and you will not get dirty hands because you've got a clean bike, because you've been cleaning it like Justin cleans his, and you're not going to touch the chain. Do this one. Ask any other questions about anything else if you like while I'm working on this.
Do you have a sag during the day? Sort of somewhere to support them?
There is a sag wagon, yeah. Jeremy will talk about that later, and I'll be based at Wollongong Dam. And if not me, someone from Wembley Cycles. I will start this properly. So, opposite the valve, because that's where the tyre is going to be easiest to get off. Put one lever in, and the second one relatively close, and pull it out and work your way around. You're best off to use the tyre lever, not your hand, so that you don't slice your hand open in case there is something sharp. If you stick your hand in like that, you can slice it if you're very unlucky. Or if you've got a really crappy old wire bead tyre that's so worn out that you shouldn't be using it, that's the other way you'll do that too. That's not going to do that. So when I take a tube out, you've got a flat, so you've got the flat for a reason. So unless you went over a bump and pinch flatted, which is a fair chance you've got a piece of glass or a thorn or something in there, I will pull it out if I have a little pump with me. And I think you should all carry a little, one of those tiny little mini pumps as well as your gas canister. Put some air in, work out where the puncture is. If it's on top, you know it's something that pierced the tyre, so glass or thorn or something. If it's underneath, it's generally because you went over a bump or something like that and you pinch flatted. Either way, I'll line it back up with the tyre. Oh yeah, there you go, there is something still in there, or I'll look inside, yep, there is something in there. Again, you stick your finger in there and do that, you're going to slice your finger on whatever it is if you haven't thought about it. I get my new tube. Tyre levers are now done with. We won't see them again today. So with your little pump or your mouth, with a bit of airing. The reason for the airing, you've created something that's a little bit more circular, particularly seeing you're pulling out your new tube that was all folded up beautifully in your saddlebag. This helps to get it nice and round to fit in nice and easily. Starting at the valve, pushing the valve in. So pushing the valve in is going to help to alleviate the problem you talked about earlier. So I'm pushing that in. I'm going to have to deflate the tube a little bit just to get the air, get it fitting on. Push that down again just to make sure it is seated properly. This is another good reason not to wear white cycling kit.
Because you will get a flat if you wear white.
Yeah, if you start leaning on it like what I'm doing. So this is the pressure moment. This is the bit where everyone starts going, I can't get it on, I can't get it on. Just sort of wiggle it around a bit. Sometimes that helps. Just sort of loosening up the tyre a bit as we go. And you've got to be careful. Like if I'm not careful, I'm going to pinch that tube under there. So lean down on a nice hard surface. I spend more time behind the computer when I'm talking to people than I do change the tubes. There we go. On we go.
And roll it over with your palms too. If your thumbs can't do it, use your palms because it's a much harder surface. And just push it over and generally get those really tight spots.
So I've got that on. Now to pump it up. The gas canister is best. You should have gloves on to do this because this is going to freeze. If you don't have gloves, grab your jersey. So I've pierced the top of that gas canister now. Let's line it up. On it goes. So questions we've had, you're not going to burst your tyre using one of these. There's not enough air in it to blow it up. We've got pretty well there, still a bit of air in that. So, you know, pretty rock solid. So that's good. Now we're ready to put it back on the bike. Again, I do all this facing upwards because, I guess mostly because I'm used to using a work stand, so I'm used to working on the bike the correct way up. I also think it's the easiest because if you've turned your bike upside down, your chain will fall off, so therefore you will get dirty fingers. And no one wants to get dirty. So putting that chain back onto the bottom cog, and I kind of missed it there. And you can just press out on the derailleur to get it to sit in. There we go. It's fallen into place. I also make sure that the weight of the bike is down on the wheel and that it's straight, so checking it against the down tube, the seat tube, to make sure your wheel is seated properly on your bike. Tighten that quick release properly, tighten your brakes back up, just make sure the wheel's sitting square and it's not rubbing. Off you go. And yeah. Was that 2 minutes, 3 minutes? So it shouldn't take hopefully too long.
Is there a reason you didn't use the tyre levers to put it back on?
Because you're more likely to pinch the tube on the way back. So you just want to be careful doing that. That's also, it is a good reason to carry 2 tubes and 2 gas canisters with you. And maybe the other thing we would suggest, so for us we would suggest, probably in this case a saddlebag over what we call a keck. You should be able to fit 2 tubes, 2 gas canisters in there, set of tyre levers. Whether you take a multi-tool, the upside to a multi-tool, this particular one has a chain breaker on it, or you can go to some fancy tools like we've got here. So multi-tool is on the bottom of your bottle cage, so it's on your bike, and this is a chain breaker that actually sits flush in your top cap with your spare link in it, so that if you do snap your chain breaker and the tool to use are on your bike permanently. And that's got pretty much every tool you'll need to tune anything on your bike, so all Allen keys and things. So there's some simple things that you can have with you. Any questions? Kind of rushed along a bit there.
Have a look at your chain breaker.
Sorry?
Can I have a look at your chain breaker?
This little one?
Yeah.
So So you want to do that away, the chain's going to sit in there, and that's what's going to pierce it. And you're going to use an Allen key in the end, which you've got on your multi-tool.
Fits in there, the top of the tube.
Yep. So yes, that's it. Any other questions? Oh, the other thing I guess to talk about is, if all of this is ringing alarm bells, you think, oh my god, I got to get my bike serviced, well, come and see Mitch. We have 3 full-time mechanics at the shop. Mitch is sort of working the front desk at the service centre here. He can inspect your bike if you want to try and get it done on the spot, which is sort of your best off to book it in. If you're unsure, come and see Mitch. You can look at it, sort of, you know what, I might be able to just tune this up for you now, go have a coffee, come back. Or he might sort of say, look, this is the stuff I think we need to do, let's book it in. Don't book your bike in for, say, the Thursday or Friday before the event. You want to get your bike back, you want to ride your bike, you want to be comfortable with the changes made to it. Particularly if they've been drastic in terms of changing tyres or chaining cassette. People make mistakes, so if you get a new chaining cassette or new cables or any of that stuff, you want to see that it's all working beautifully. You know, that's just something you like I said before, you've put so much effort into training, you want to make sure everything's right on the day. So people that in mind. Alright guys, if you've got any other questions you want to ask us not from the group, then feel free as well. But otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.